Hey, Brian Young here. Today's video is on employees and everything you need to know about hiring and managing them. Now, I know you're really excited about growing and scaling your business, and you're trying to decide what the best structure for that is. And there's so many question marks. When I first approached this issue, it just seemed like an overwhelming task. Like it was too daunting for any just regular layman to approach. But as I waded through the information and talked to some accountants and tax professionals, I think I've boiled down what it would take to hire employees and independent contractors and bring on business partners or hire temporary employees and the pros and cons of each. And so in this video today, we're going to go over employees, what it takes to, or what defines an employee, and then what it takes from a regulatory and taxation standpoint to bring an employee on board to help you with your book selling business. Before we go any further, again, I just want to throw a disclaimer out there. I'm not a CPA or a lawyer or a tax professional. I'm just a business owner who has opinions. I'm going to share with you those opinions in this video series, but I highly recommend that you go and you seek one of these professionals and get some professional advice for your business. So what is an employee? According to Webster's dictionary, an employee is a person who works for another person or for a company for wages or a salary. So pretty basic. And conversely, what is an independent contractor? In another video series, I talked about an independent contractor, but it varies a little bit. It's an independent contractor is one that contracts to do work or perform a service for another, and that retains total and free control over the means or the methods used in doing the work or performing the service. So the end result of an independent contractor and an employee are the same. The person hiring either of them has ends in mind, a finished product in mind that they hold the individual or the company accountable to. But the difference between an independent contractor and an employee is that with an employee, the owner of the business can meddle with the methods and the direction and the details and the process in which that ends is achieved. But that's not the case for an independent contractor. So an independent contractor solves the problem, sources the books, lists the books completely independent of the direction of the business owner. Whereas an employee, you can not only expect the finished product to be to your liking, but you can also help dictate the steps along the way. And so that's what differentiates an employee and an independent contractor. But an employee, according to the IRS, which is really important because the IRS are the ones that sort of write the rules on all these things, not Webster's dictionary. They say an employee is anyone who performs service for you is your employee if you can control what will be done and how it will be done. This is so even when you give employees freedom of action. What matters is that you have the right to control the details of how the services are performed. So as you're envisioning your online book selling business, if you are really concerned, if it's very important for you to be involved in the details of the process of sourcing books and listing books and managing your book selling business, then you may be out of the gate looking to hire somebody who would fit the employee model as opposed to the independent model. So also according to the government, the U.S. Small Business Association, there's 8 steps you need to take when hiring your first employee. And so when I first started, I had a bunch of bad advice. Honestly, I didn't do much research on my own. And so I was under the assumption that if I just had 1 or 2 part-time employees, I wouldn't have to adhere to all these government regulations. Almost like I was kind of thinking in the back of my mind, it probably would take 5 or 6 or 7, somewhere between 5 and 25 employees before I really have to get serious about all this federal and state compliance stuff. But in the research that I've done over the last handful of months, last year or so, I found out that that's not the case. The first thing to consider, according to the SBA, is you need to be asking yourself, is it time to hire somebody? Do you have adequate work to necessitate the hire of an individual to come on board in your company? Because it is going to take work to set them up from a legality standpoint. It's going to take some extra time and effort on your behalf to make sure that you're compliant with all the government regulations. So you want to make sure you have enough work to justify this move. And so these 8 steps are going to help you get through that process. Step number one, you need to obtain an employer identification number, or EIN number. So that's a federal number. So you're registering your business with the federal government, and you're telling the federal government that you are an employer, that you're a business. And so sometimes this number is used for a variety of other purposes, especially at tax time. If you operate a sole proprietorship, oftentimes they'll need this number when you file for taxes. But you can also use it for setting up your first employee. So to get an EIN number, you can go to the U.S. Internal Revenue Services website, or you can call the 800 number right there on the screen. It's a pretty simple process to do. I can't remember if there's a fee involved or not, but if there is, it's probably right. It's probably under the $50 range. Number two, set up records for withholding taxes. So according to the IRS, you must keep records of employment taxes for at least 4 years. And there are 3 types of withholding taxes you'll need for your business. We're going to go through those 3 really quick. Type number 1, federal income tax. So every employee must provide an employer with a signed withholding exempt certificate, so a W-4, on or before the date of employment. So I'm sure you've worked jobs before. You need to fill out your employees need to fill out a W-4 form, and then you need to submit that to the federal government. If you want some information on this entire process, more in-depth information, go to the website down here. It's a PDF guide that I think it's a 15-page PDF guide that walks you through the entire process here. I'm just going to summarize it for you in this slideshow presentation because we don't have a ton of time to go over it in detail. I'm just going to give you the outline and just the basic information, and you can jump in to study it more in depth if you'd like. So the second type of tax you need to be set up for is the federal wage and tax statement. So every year, employers must report to the federal government wages paid and taxes withheld for each employee. This report is filed using the W-2 wage and tax statement. So, you've seen your W-2s before, and you usually get one at the end of the year from your boss if you're an employee. Well, you also need to fill those out and provide those not only to your employees but to the federal government, so they can keep record of what you're paying and what you're taking in and collecting for taxes. And then finally, state taxes. So depending on what state you live in, there's different regulations. And so it's really important to find out what's required for your state. So if you go to sba.gov, you can go to this website that I have listed below here. You can learn about your specific state and local tax obligations. So step number 3 in preparing your business for your first employee is making sure you've done an employee eligibility verification. So the federal government requires that employers to verify an employee's eligibility to work in the United States. And to get that verification, they need to fill out an I-9 form. So again, so far, the work that's gone into setting your business up to hire the first employee hasn't been astronomically difficult. It's just you print out a handful of forms, you have them fill the forms out. And so this is just them filling out an I-9 and you sending in. It's just going to make sure that they're a legal citizen, or they have the legal ability to work for you in the United States. Step number 4, register with your state's new hire reporting program. All employers are required to report newly hired and rehired employees to a state directory within 20 days of their hire or rehire date. And again, if you download that packet a few steps back, it's going to give you all the links necessary to do that. If you don't want to go there, you could literally Google Minnesota, or whatever state you're in, Minnesota's new hire reporting program, and you'll get some links will pop up on Google that you can follow, and you can fill out those forms. Step number 5, obtain workers' compensation insurance. All businesses with employees are required to carry workers' compensation insurance coverage through a commercial carrier on a self-insured basis or through their state's workers' compensation insurance program. So again, check out your state, type in workers' compensation insurance and the name of your state into Google search. You should be able to find it that way too. Some states have different regulations, but one of the things required for somebody who's employing employees is that they have workers' compensation insurance. And so this is really the first step, the first thing that's going to cost you money is you're going to have to buy this insurance. And depending on your area and the nature of work that you're putting your employees through will determine how much this insurance costs. Typically, if you're just hiring your first employee and they're just like a part-time employee, it won't cost you too much. Step number 6, PostsRequire Notices. So Yeah, if you've ever worked at a place of business before, I'm sure you've seen notices for employee rights, and that sort of thing posted on the walls. Where you're required to post those on the walls of your office so that your employees can see them. So step number 7, the seventh step you need to take in setting up your business for your first employee is to file your taxes. So generally, employers who pay wages subject to income tax, withholding, Social Security, and Medicare taxes must file IRS Form 941, Employers' Quarterly Federal Tax Return. So you're going to need to file for taxes. Now, depending on what kind of business you run, how many people you have working for you, what your revenue looks like, is going to determine when you file your taxes. But typically, business file quarterly taxes. So you'll need to look into that. Go to the website here below, and it's just going to help you navigate those things. Get your business set up for taxes. Step number 8: get organized and keep yourself informed. So again, these are all recommendations from SBA.org. So it's an organization, but just keeping a good record and making sure that you're keeping up on various tax obligations that you might have, and informing yourself. Like we live in the information age, and you don't need to be overwhelmed. There's tons of information out there. If you're curious about regulations for hiring employees or independent contractors or partners or temp workers or whatever, there's information out there. You just need to start reading and studying. We do the stuff that has little value, and you'll find the good stuff out there. It usually rises to the top thanks to Google's analytics.